So as usual, this week was once again filled with a lot of interesting morning lecture, and it is my hope that we can go through some of the key points. Today, I do actually want to go through some of the questions that were posed because I think they're actually also very important. I'm actually right now in China, in Suzhou, China, coming here for a sharing that I will be giving to a group of highly selective entrepreneurs, and this is actually part of the what they're called the leadership training for entrepreneurs, especially for philanthropists. And it's actually organized by a separate group who has been cooperating with Tzu Chi for many years in China. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm not in Hualien. But regardless, I think no matter where we are, I think that's exactly what Dharma, what Master talked about today, is that regardless, no matter where we are, no matter who we talk to, whether it's the heavenly beings or all the different kinds of sentient beings, that the Dharma spread will be nonetheless continuing and all over. So let us continue for our session today. As always, we're going to begin with a review. So last week we talked about the fragrance. We talked about the fragrance, where it comes from, and we mentioned that the fragrance that we can smell actually comes from. It comes from ourselves, from inside, from the fact that we are doing the selfless giving, sincere and selfless giving, and then for the benefit of all sentient beings without asking for anything in return. And that is very important. That's part of the things that we do. And we also talked about that, however, for the heavenly beings, and that's something that was also talked about today, the Dharma wheel turning king, whether it's the greater one or the more holier ones or whatnot. The idea is that they have performed and they have done countless acts of utmost kindness and benevolence, and that is also very important. They have a lot of blessings. They have done a lot of good things, and therefore they have a lot of blessings, and therefore they were rebirthed into the heavenly realm, and they were able to enjoy their life, and their life is without wanting. Okay, so last week we talked about that is not enough, because by doing all of these things, by helping others, it's not enough. And why is that? Because there are still traces of affliction, traces of these greed and these negative sentiments in our mind, and that we must strive as cultivators, as practitioners, as a disciple of Jingsi Dharma lineage. We must continue to think about how we can actually purify, how we can actually get rid of that trace. And therefore, Master told us that we not only are trying to help others, but we also need to try to foster good affinity. Always be on the lookout for wanting to help, but also trying to have the good affinity of letting everyone feel this Dharma joy. It's not enough to just help people, but you need to let them feel good about this. Not only feel good about it, but then they're willing to do it, to accept what you're teaching them, what you're helping them with, and being able to feel that joy. And that's very important. And so last week we talked about this little kid, 5-year-old child, who had done exactly just that. Every fabric of his life, everything that he talks about, everything that he thinks about, every thought we imagine, it's all about how we can pass the Dharma, how we can try to convince other people that what we are doing is necessary, and what we're doing is very important, and what we're doing is something that's very essential. And that's exactly what Master was saying, is that for every single thought that we have, the sincerity comes from the wanting and the desire to be able to help others. Not just that, but also passing this joy that we have. We have the joy of helping others. So it's not so much that we are helping others, but we also need to help them feel the same joy of helping others. However we feel, however good we feel, however achieved and accomplished that we feel, we want others to feel the same. That's why when we are listening to the Dharma and listening to the lecture, if we feel the joy, we also want to have other people feel the same joy as well. And that's very important. So that's what we talked about, that bodhisattvas, they practice the 6 perfections. And the difference between the first 5 and the last one, the 6th one, wisdom, is that while the first 5, you can do all of it on your own. You can do all of it by yourself. If you make a determination, you can always give. You can always give selflessly. You can always uphold you can always uphold your the precepts, and you can always have the forbearance to go through all the difficulties. You can make the choices to go through all of this. You can find the tranquility, and you can also diligent. Those are all the things that you can have a choice on your own, to make the choice that I want to do all these things. It's up to you. However, the last one, wisdom, is hardest because it comes from trying to interact with others, to encourage all to listen and practice the same thing that you do. You give selflessly. Now you have to have the wisdom to tell others to also give selflessly, and it becomes that much harder. You uphold the precept, and it has helped you, but now you have to convince others to do the same. So the 6th perfection, the last one, is the most important because that's the one that you practice. The first 5 gives you the practice on your own, but the last one talks about trying to do that, trying to pass those first 5 practices to other people, convince them, help them, so that they could do the same. And that is the hardest of all. And that is what Master told us, in that it's not enough to help others to do the utmost kind deeds, but also how do you make others do the same? How do you make other people who are stingy to give willingly, to be willing to give? And those are very difficult. So that's what Master told us, that in what we see in the little child, the pure-mindedness in the past becomes the seeds of benevolence of now. It's very important of what we are thinking now. What we're thinking now will become the seeds for the future. And therefore, it's very important that we plant the right seeds, that we plant the seeds of pure-mindedness, that we can try to think about that all the things that we're trying to do, it's not just for myself. It's not just myself doing it, but rather, I am trying to get others to do the same. And that's exactly what Master is trying to get us to do. So Master said ordinary beings are lost, lost due to the ignorant affliction. But on the other hand, I believe that as practitioners and cultivators, we should be enlightened due to compassion, that everything that we do, compassion, all the things that the kind deeds that we do due to compassion, they should be leading us. And that's what Master told us. They should lead us to be enlightened in the future. And so all the things that we do and all the abilities that we have through our hearing, our eyesight, and all of that, we can do that because, as the other day that we heard, because it was the samadhi, the power of tranquility to contemplate. And I think that's what the last Saturday, what we talked about. So that's what we talked about last week. But this week, I want to focus on something. This week was special because we wrapped up about more than 20 days of the merit of nose and the sense of smell. So we wrapped up the whole thing. Okay, we wrapped up the whole thing about the nose and the smell. And I remember it began at the beginning of March when I first talked about the merits of the nose and how it means that we have to be there up close and personal, because you can see through very far away. You can hear from very far away. You can see through other people's video. You can hear from other people's sound recording, but you cannot have somebody bring you the smell. You have to be up there personal, up close and personal to smell it for yourself. And that's the idea of smell. It's not the smell itself. It's not like it smells good or it smells bad. No, it's the idea of you have to be there to feel. Otherwise, you will just not be there to get the feeling. For example, like everybody says, it's so important to be Xun Fa Xiang in the morning at the abode. But if you're never there on your own, it doesn't matter how many times I tell you how important or how special that feels. you will just not get it. That's the idea of the smell. It's not the smell itself. It's not like I'm asking you, do you smell? Do you know how it smells like in the morning? No, it's not what I meant. It means that you have to be there to feel that environment. If you're not there to feel the environment, it's something that's beyond space, beyond what we understand as space, far and close. But do you feel it? Okay, so that's what Master talks about in the greater scheme of things. It's not just talking about the nose and the smell anymore, but rather it's talking about the idea of feeling. Do you feel that sometimes some things are easier felt in close proximity? However, sometimes things can be felt across long distance. So it all depends. Okay, so that's the review. So, but before, but one of the key thing that I want to get to today is, and then this is the one question that I think is very important. So throughout chapter 19, we've been talking about the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra. The practitioners of Lotus Sutra who upholds, reads and recites, and sings and explains and practices the Lotus Sutra. Someone who does all of this will be able to see very far, hear very wide, and be able to smell throughout the world. And what does that mean? It smells through from the lowest of the hell to the highest of the heavens, and all the different kinds of sentient beings in between. Okay, and be able to differentiate all kinds, not just the sentient beings, but also the non-sentient beings. And not just that, but be able to differentiate and tell the difference between the past cultivations, all the things that you have done in the past, your past karma, your future, your present, through the sense of smell. The cultivator, the practitioner of the Lotus Sutra can smell all of that. And supposedly, when we have finished the merit on smelling and nose, we should understand why can the practitioners smell all of this. Okay, supposedly, after 20 plus days, Master talked about smell every day, nose every day. We should be able to tell why the practitioners can smell all throughout the world, and they can have the sense of, they can smell it and they know exactly who it is, they know where it is, they know what they have done in the past, they know all their karma and all of these things, supposedly. But I don't know, I'm at a loss. Do we really know why the practitioners can actually do all that? And it's in these past few days that I really got before I only theorized. Before I theorized why the practitioners can smell and know all the smells. But these past few days, it gave me an even deeper meaning of how and why. So I wanted to bring to a couple of days ago when Master talks about the distribution in the very high in the mountain, 5,000 meters above sea level. And that's very high. Master talks about it as if it's it's halfway to heaven. Okay, it's halfway to heaven. So I want to talk about this particular Qinghai distribution. And many people said that 23 years ago when we went there also, it was the highest, it was the farthest, and it was also the most difficult, most accomplished distribution ever in Tzu Chi Foundation. I'm sure to be able to top this list, it's already very difficult. I don't know if it's the most difficult. I mean, there are, I remember, North Korea, that was being very difficult. I remember there are some warring countries in Middle East and also Africa. They're also very difficult. So I don't know if this is really the top of the list, but I can definitely tell and see that this is very difficult, the Qinghai distribution. So when Master talked about this, and she specifically mentioned two particular stories that she got, and that was very, very interesting, very, very heartwarming. Okay, so there was a 70-year-old man. There was a 70-year-old man who came to our distribution center. Okay, and what he had in his hands were the distribution notice from 23 years ago, and he said to us that this particular sheet He said, this is my most precious treasure in my life. This is the most precious treasure in my life. And so Master continued to say that the way that he held this notice, and because it was very cold, right? This was a very, it was, I think, a couple of days ago when we were online and doing the online meeting with them, they said it was about 25 degrees below zero. So it was very cold. It was still snowing. And so he held this old man held this notice very close to himself. And then he actually guarded this particular notice in his shirt, in his jacket, in his coat. And so Master said, I see that he was wearing this very thick jacket, okay? And to keep this notice very close to his heart, so that this notice, this paper, can be very warm, and that when he goes home, he put this notice in the box. And in the box itself, there are photos of Buddha, and there are sutra prints of sutra, and that's where he kept this as the most precious treasure in his life. He kept it in this box, and he cherished them always. And these people, they are sort of semi nomadic. They sort of goes around and they move around very often. And so he will always take this box with them, because this box to him is the most precious, and in it is the most precious treasure of his life. And so this is the story that Master shared with us about how the 70-year-old old man said that this is the most cherished treasure. And he said, I would never forget about it. I would never forget it ever. And it's not just himself. He said, my children, my grandchildren, and understandably from that point on, more and more generations, they would never forget it ever. We'll always cherish it. Okay, that's what this old man says. That's what this old man says about this particular notice. Okay, so the next story was about a Tibetan monk, who specifically came to our distribution after driving for 50, 60 kilometers in the snow. Why? Because he came just personally to show the letter. And we have the distribution notice, and then on the other side, or a separate sheet, it will be a letter of gratitude and a letter of condolences from the Master to comfort them, to share with them that do not worry, do not be afraid, because we are here. Okay, that letter. So he traveled, this Tibetan monk traveled more than 50 kilometers in the snow, in the cold, just to personally show the letter that his father has passed down to him. And so what is this letter? Well, this letter, amazingly, was that from 13 years ago, his father passed away 13 years ago. And his father told him that when he was 15, okay, so when this monk was 15, that there was a snow disaster like right now, and these people came. But apparently, this Tibetan monk didn't remember as deeply. But the father made sure that in this life, you can be forgetful about other things. You can forget about some things in life, but the gratitude behind this letter, the gratitude that is represented by this letter, behind these 8 materials, you must never forget. Okay, so that's why this Tibetan monk, even though 13 years ago, the father passed away, but before the father passed away, this monk, this time he saw his relatives coming home, and they have this letter too from Tzu Chi, and he saw, wow, I know this letter. I know these people. So he knew that we were distributing. So that's why he drove 50, 60 kilometers in the snow, just to show us that this was what his father gave him. This was what his father passed down to him, that you must never forget. And so he said, the Tibetan monk said, this is what my father passed to me before his end. And he said, I must cherish this letter. And this is what my father passed to me, that I must be grateful to this group, to this organization. So the two stories here are very special. One was that the 70-year-old man who was the one that received our aid still remembered. And two, the one that was the child who was also there when he was 15 years old, but he didn't quite remember. But what he remembered the most was that his father, before he passed away, said, you must never forget and you must show your gratitude. So when he finally, 13 years old passed away. 13 years ago passed away. So that's about, it's for 13 years, he carried this mission on his back, knowing that one day, we don't know when, but one day when this group comes back for whatever reason, he was going to come personally to show the gratitude, because that's what his father told him. So these are the two very special but different stories about the ones who were actually there to receive the aid, and the one who actually received the mission to pass down this sense of gratitude, to always not forget, to always remember. And this is what I want to share with everybody, is that how is it that for someone who practice this, who practice the Lotus Sutra, can know all the smell of all the sentient beings, to be able to know the smell and know the feeling of all associated with all these sentient beings and all these realms. Why? Because when we do things like this, it's so deeply imprinted in our heart that the people that we help will never forget. They will remember all of it. And not just that, so will we. And that's how we will remember the smell or the feeling of this event, these people. And because it's so deeply imprinted in our heart, we will carry it. We will carry it like the seed of pure-mindedness. This is not a seed of love and hate. This is the seed of very, very pureness, the pure pureness that we will have in our mind, of always be grateful, always be thankful for the people that helped us. And for us, like Master, who always will remember who we have helped and why we have helped. And that is why the moment that this comes up, she exactly remember, and she will know exactly the feeling as if it was yesterday. And so that's how the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra will be able, after all these years and generation, be able to differentiate the sentient beings, their smell, their voices, their sight, and all of it all together. So I believe that as a review of the 20-some days of Master talking about the feeling and the smell, it comes down to this. If we do this so deeply in our mind, it's not just doing, it's not just giving, but understand that you have become part of their lives, and you have become part, of that they have become part of you. It's not just samadhi. It's not just contemplation. It's not just thinking about this, but rather they become part of us. They become part of us. They become part of our lives. They become part of our DNA. That's why we will always remember them. That's why we will always be able to differentiate between these sentient beings and the ones that we don't know. Because the ones that we know, we are so deeply intertwined with them. And that's what Master is asking us to do. Don't let it just be a distribution. Let it be something that deeply imprinted in our mind. Don't let it be just something that we wake up in the morning and listen, but be grateful about what we heard, even if we don't quite understand it. But be grateful of what we heard and be grateful of all the things that were taught to us. That's the key. If we can deeply put it in us, then we would just be like the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, that we would be able to hear the sound, smell the fragrance and know exactly where they come from, what they've done in the past, and what their future is going to be. And that's what I think, how and why the practitioners can have such merit. And that's what I think Master is trying to get us to do as well. So that's my sharing for today. And I want to get into, even though I said I was going to save a little bit more time, but it seems that we're almost out of time. So I'm going to do this question very quickly, because I saw this question and I think that as this is something dealing with other people, especially a dialysis patient, I think I should try to get to this question sooner rather than later. So the question says, a dialysis patient complained that the nurses at the center treated her roughly, yet she asked the volunteer not to talk to the nurse, for she was afraid if they would treat her worse after finding out that she has complained about this treatment. So how should the volunteer handle such? If we share this secret and should not reveal to others, but we hope we can be of help. So once again, it's always a tug of war between, should I do this or should I not do this? And if I do something, would actually backfire, would actually cause more harm, cause more injury than good. And I think it's very important to always be thinking about the pros and the cons. But so when I saw this question, I really want to get to try to answer this question for you. But I realize that I can't. I cannot answer this question because I do not understand the exact details. And I do not understand the nurse. Would the nurse actually make things worse by trying to take revenge because somebody told on her? Or would all these things happen? I don't understand. I would not know. But very importantly, I think Master had told us that first of all, how will we be able to help the patient? How will we be able to help the patient so that he or she, the patient, can be at ease? That's very important. Firstly, how we can calm and comfort this patient so that the patient himself or herself will no longer feel afraid and fear. Whether we told or not told, she will always be in suffering. And that's something that we wanted to make sure that at least the patient will be at ease. Second of all, I think it's also very important that we should think about is with the nurse, what kind of actions that the nurse would take. And that takes understanding of the person. And I think that's what Master has been talking about, is that we need to know from looking, from hearing, from smelling. And it's not smell, I'm not asking you to smell how the nurse smells like. The feeling of the nurse when you're interacting with her, is that someone who would be exacting revenge on somebody who told, or how we would interact with them. And I think this is exactly what Master has been saying in the past few months about the practitioners of Lotus Sutra, is that someone who practices the Lotus Sutra will watch, look, observe carefully through the eyes, through the ears, and through the nose. And then doing what we are being told today in this week, the merit of the tongue, through the merit of the tongue, to try to preach the idea, to go and so that the nurse or the patient will find the tranquility, will find the peace, and the nurse will find the right thing to do. And that's what the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra is. It's a pathway telling you to look carefully, to listen carefully, to get a feeling of the person and their interaction. And then in a very kind and gentle way, an effective way, to talk, to speak, to convince, and to try to lead and guide those people who are uncertain of themselves. So that's what we need to do, because I really am too far away to have a sense of what's going on. But this is exactly what the Lotus Sutra is teaching us, to observe carefully, selflessly. Do not put your own bias into this. And then, only then, after we have understood, look what they've done, hear what they've said, and feel the feeling, and then begin to try to convince and guide others who are in need of our help. So that's my response. I wanted to get through more questions, but I think we're out of time. So that's something that would be my reply. And obviously, if if the answer, if you need more, if you have more specific information, if you need more, I'd be more than happy to take to speak privately and figure out what we can do. And I'm sure there will be others that are willing to help you as well. So thank you all. That's my sharing for today. And we're not going to now open to other centers for your sharing. Thank you.
Happy Saturday morning, Amitabha, to our beloved Master Cheng Shifu from the airport, Brother Brother Yuping, and all my brothers, all my Dharma brothers and sisters. Happy morning. This morning, so thankful, so blessed to be given this opportunity to share our Thai TV series, the series on the Grandmaster, all the Grandmasters. The first chapter of this Grandmaster Di Jia, or what we call Zhi Da Si, born the year 538 AD. Zhi Da Si, his original name before he became a monk, he was called Cheng An. In fact, I did some research. His name is pronounced as Zhi Yi. In Hokkien, it's called Zhi Di Jia, but some call him Di. So this actually depending on where your source is. Anyway, we shouldn't be attached to the pronunciation or these labels or names. That's the whole, I think that's the core teaching of Lotus Sutra, non-attachment to labels, names, and words. At age 18, our Grandmaster Di Jia became a monk. He gave up his family. The father wanted him to continue his work in the government, but he gave up all the fame, wealth, his influence. Just like our Lord Buddha, he also gave up when he was at his peak. He was about to succeed the throne, so they left. At first, he followed in this Hualien at Fa Xian Fa Si. He followed one great monk also during that day, during those days. And then after he learned what he needed to learn, he joined the Hui Si Chan Si, another Grandmaster teaching him meditation at Da Su Mang Zhen. Di Jia Da Si, he was born in a very turbulent era of China. And those days, during the North and South dynasty, civil war happened. You know, in ancient China, they always fight. They always fight for control of dynasty. This Nanbei Cao. Then after that, the Sui Cao, the Sui dynasty. That's where he went through two very turbulent times, two very different dynasties. And we saw a lot of temples and schools and homes being destroyed because of this war. I think these slides, Sister Lily, I think these slides, we skip it because I think I have no time to elaborate on it. Maybe later we share these slides to all our brothers and sisters. Yeah, I just elaborate a little my limited understanding on Di Jia Da Si. So when Di Jia Da Si, his family, his dad, all were ousted by this loss in the war. He left to join the monkhood. His teachings are under the northern and southern Buddhist teaching. He laid a very good foundation for the future Tang dynasty. Tang dynasty, as we know, Tang Cao, that is the best time, the most glorious time in ancient China. Tang Ren, that's why we are called Tongyan, Tang Ren, is because of this foundation laid by Master Di Jia. Yeah. During the North and South dynasty, after that Sui dynasty. After Sui dynasty also didn't last too long. So went into the greatest era, the most glorious time called Tang dynasty. 大唐盛世. That's the best time in the Chinese history, and it's the most peaceful and the best, the richest, the most stable, harmonious world. That's why it's called 大唐盛世. During his time, there's a lot of infighting among different schools. Even those days, like now also, different school of thoughts. There's a lot of argument now, which is good, which is better. A lot of this 计较比较 or this comparison, or this it's mainly comparison. So Master Tijia, this Grandmaster Zhi Dashi managed to unite both the northern schools and the southern school. So that is his wisdom. So as we know, the northern states, because they are from this Mongolia, they are from Korea, they are from all this Manchuria. They are always on the horses. So they prefer the samadhi type. So they prefer a lot of meditation. They prefer, to quiet themselves down. So they do not emphasize a lot of sutra texts. They do not study the texts, the Buddhist scriptures, the sutra, not so much. But the southern one, because they are they're very stable. Mainly the southern China very stable. So they are not on horses. They walk. They do a lot of walking instead of spending time on horses. So they have a lot of time to read texts, to chant. So with this this early exposure in this turbulent time, the ability to solve problems during his time in and outside the temple, he managed to form the Tiantai school of Buddhism. Tiantai school of Buddhism is the very first one in China. The rest are all, of course, as we know, is from India. There are many different schools. They are all teaching a very different thoughts. Of course, we know the Lotus Sutra emphasizes on the balance of doctrines and practice. Like what Master Cheng always teach is in the balance. It's neither here, it's neither this nor that, but it's the middle part. So we need to strike a balance and harmony. So if there is balance and harmony, we will have a very peaceful and harmonious world. If not, like lately we see a lot of imbalances, right? This natural disaster, catastrophe everywhere, from Australia to New Zealand. Latest one is the MZM, yeah, Mozambique and Zimbabwe and Malawi. So actually, that's why we see from this video, there is this reluctance and hesitance of the Korean king when during this Sui dynasty, when the China sent an envoy to try to recover the three holy texts, from Korea. The king was very reluctant at first. Very hesitate to return the three holy texts, the three holy books written by Grandmaster Tijia. But after being told that by one of the gurus there, he returned the three texts to China because he realized that when we truly practice the Lotus Sutra, the truth is not in the words, not in the labels or concepts, but the truth is in the implementation. The truth is in the way we serve, without, like what Brother Joe just mentioned, by serving without expecting anything in return. Yeah, that's the beauty of the teaching of Lord Buddha. Tijia Daisi Tija Dashi, Master Tija is being called the Sakya of the East. From the video, we see many of his legends, his stories. There are many stories about him. I think we should pay more attention on watching the video, and we can discuss about it in our chat group. I just make a real short summary because I'm only given like 20 minutes and I cannot share too much. This Tija Dashi is very strong in promoting non-killing. He convinced everyone to become good citizen. Like he turned all the fishermen into farmers. He transformed their lives. He bought over all the lands along the rivers and the seaside in this Zhejiang province. During those days, 1,500 years ago, he was already promoting vegetarianism, non-killing. He respects the dignity of life. He wanted everyone to not causing harm, refrain from harming, refrain from killing, because he went through all the wars and all the turbulent times during the change of the dynasties. A lot of killing and slaughtering. Including the Yang Guang, the king of one of the kings of the Sui dynasty. Yang Guang was also a very cruel and very violent king until he followed the teaching of Master Tija. So we can see the influence of Master Tija and the teaching of Lotus Sutra. In this sense, very violent and manslaughter. He became a good king. He built many schools and temples for Tiantai Master, Zhi Dashi. And now this Lotus Sutra, why is it called the King of Sutra? Because among so many sutras taught by Lord Buddha, this sutra was the last one. The final years of Lord Buddha. In fact, Lord Buddha used 7 years to teach this wondrous sutra called Lotus Sutra. He founded this Tiantai school based on Lotus Sutra, of course, and Tiantai school of Mahayana Buddhism, the first official Buddhist school system in China, is started here. And then all his teachings are spreaded. His teachings are spreaded to Japan, to Korea, and many parts of Southeast Asia. And we know there's one Jianzhen Da, the one who went to Japan 7 times. He also is one of the very staunch follower of Tiantai school Buddhism. And in Japan alone, there are more than 3,000 temples and schools or Buddhist schools in Japan alone till today. Korea, about 355 schools and temples. So you can see the influence of this Master Tija, his wisdom, and the implementation of the practical part of Buddhism, what we call Buddhism in action today, which in Tzu Chi, which is also part of our Tzu Chi school of Buddhism. As we know, Tzu Chi is the 9th school. The 8th school is Tiantai Zhong. The 9th school is Tzu Chi Zhong. Tzu Chi Zhong also teaches doctrine and practice at the same time. Jie and Xing, the implementation and also the principles. And because of this teaching, during this Sui dynasty and Tang dynasty, because of the application of the teaching of Lotus Sutra, during this greatest era of Chinese history, you can see peace and harmony and prosperity in all aspects, from politics, social, economic, and education, cultural, and also the the foreign relations with the rest of the world during the Tang Dynasty. It reaches to Europe and many parts of the world. That's the basic teaching of Lotus Sutra. We emphasize on harmony, on peace, on amicable, solving all problems. All problems can be solved through Lotus Sutra. With Dharma, we can solve anything. Like what Master Cheng has been teaching us all this while. Yeah, when we apply Dharma, when we have Faru Sing and Lu Sing, nothing can bother us. We can overcome anything with the courage, with the wisdom, and with the faith, of course. And Master Teacher wrote more than 20 books, or the big one, the major ones. Yeah, the three most famous one, as shown in the video, that during the turbulent time, during wartime, all the texts were missing. Some are in Japan, some went to Korea. So the three major ones, this Chinese envoy sent there to recover was the great treatise on concentration and insight, the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, and the third one, the profound meaning of Lotus Sutra. So these three books, of course, they also form the core belief and the core teaching of Tzu Chi school of Buddhism. And because of time constraint, the first book, I love the first book very much because it's on concentration and insight. Concentration and insight, maybe the one Brother Joe or Sifu can help us elaborate more on that. My time is up, and I'm given only 20 minutes. So may all have a peaceful and joyful journey in our Tzu Chi world, using this our influence to, especially in this WAD, this Saturday WAD session. May all be well and healthy, walking diligently on this Bodhisattva path, life after life. And where else would you want to be? If not in the Bodhisattva path, you do not want to be in the other realms. Heavenly being included, we shouldn't be there also. So we will make vows to come back life after life to practice Lord Buddha's teaching, and we spend quality time together like this. It's a great time. It's a very fantastic journey, I think. Last but not least, one very important and famous quote from Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha said this: "Those who serve the sick serves me." So I think in Tzu Chi we are doing the right thing. Master Cheng gave us this platform to serve the poor, the marginalized sections of the society. So through serving, of course, we see a lot of changes in Malaysia, in the Philippines. Or this morning, Master mentioned the two examples. One is the Pingdong teacher, by giving selflessly, or by giving donating the land, and also the Philippine families who donate the land for almost school. So the practice of equanimity on task, when we serve, when we donate, when we dana unconditionally, all these merits, all this grace, all this blessing will come to us, either as individual or society or the whole country, the whole world will benefit. And I think I will end here on Kanan. Over to you, Master Huang.
Hello. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot. Another week for the Saturday, everyone gather together and put together and to listen and the review of the Lotus Sutra. And I think Brother Geoff has really put a lot of effort on preparing the PPT and trying his best to let us have a very clear understanding of Master Tzu Chi. I think it's very important because Master did say she really very concerned about this. She also very very precious the Master Tzu Chi, the spirit, while he's carry on and spreading the Lotus Sutra in his whole life. I think for the episode of 10, for the Master Tzu Chi, they did mention a word say never take the Buddha Dharma 末将佛法那个当人情嘛 never treat the Buddha Dharma as like a social relationship. Just like just like I know the Lotus Sutra, and just like take it as for one to take some advantage on it. But also Master say Master Tzu Chi also saying that never the mentor of Master Tzu Chi say to Master 慧师大师告诉智者大师嘛，莫将佛法当人情嘛，莫当那个佛法断众人，never stop passing down the wonders and Dharma to the next generation after generation. I think this is like what Master teaches the Tzu Chi, our members must carry on the spirit of a living Bodhisattva in our life after life. I think it's the same. And thank you for Brother Geoff. Really give us a wonderful sharing, and thought that just how he mentioned is it can try to evaluate more about what is Zhongguan or whatever. To be honest, I also have no idea about it, but I will try my best to put effort. Since I become master disciple, I think this is my responsibility to learn more about all the sages that in the past, 圣人, and the teaching that they're passing down until now. This is what I think I also might put my effort on study. So once I know, I will try to share to you. Okay, I think this is my feedback for Brother Geoff. Thank you.
Okay, before we close this wonderful session, we'll sing a prayer song for Africa.
我的心在静思中感恩，我的信念充满虔诚。大家
Brother Geoff for the wonderful sharing, lots of heartfelt and wisdom sharing. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your presence today. Hope that each of us could sustain the Dharma joy and take in another piece of Masters and Hualien love to our life. Let us please make 3 sincere vows to the Buddha and Master Cheng as we depart to apply these teachings in our daily life. Let us pay our respects to our teachers of life's universal truths. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And a bow to our beloved Shifu who could join us today.感恩. See you next week.